I'm Nicky Hughes, and we've got Joe Brent with the Kentucky Heritage Council and Tom Fugate with the Military History Museum. And we're going to take a little tour of Fort Hill, concentrating on the area that there's been some work done on. We're making some progress on clearing the jungle off the top of the hill. And we're starting off at what's now the trailhead, where the trail that leads up the side of the hill connects with downtown Frankfort, right behind the Capitol Plaza Tower. This area will receive some improvements in that the trail that's here now just isn't satisfactory. It's pretty much washed out, and we hope to bypass this area and put a road right curving around the hill here and heading down to the parking lot down by the cave that will be sufficient for horse-drawn vehicles to go up and down. That will be our main public access once we get underway. So, gentlemen, if I don't fall off this thing, shall we start climbing if we can?
Now, I noticed the lady in a futility scene, the W stood up there somewhere.
Now here we've got a pretty serious washout problem, and obviously this has to be dealt with.
Yeah, this is pretty bad.
Yep.
One of the things Ken has asked me about is, do we have any kind of specs for what a military road would look like?
Not really. What we've got here is a real good surviving example of one when we get a few more feet on up the way.
I mean, would there be any specifications? I wouldn't think so.
I doubt it.
Either. I mean, they just like kind of grade it, and would they put pavement on it, or gravel, or?
Yeah, in fact, you can see on this one, gravel paving is still in evidence there. Some steps here.
This is with the Boy Scouts?
This was the Boy Scout project. And they still use the trail. Now we get to hear some huffing and puffing. See 3, well 2.5 overweight historians trying to climb Fort Hill, dragging a cameraman behind them. That's the worst part. Yeah, well, there's just one big switchback. The bottom of the road was demolished when the Capitol Plaza was put into place, so that eliminated the connection between the old military road, which we think was built during the war, and downtown Frankfort, the street grid downtown. And right in here, it starts up. We're pretty much back to the original width of the road, except for where the jungle has overgrown us here.
Where the tree is
yeah.
there.
Mm-hmm. It's about 8-10 feet wide.
You can see here.
And so the idea is to take it back.
Yeah.
Take the brush out.
We'll take all the brush out, and really don't have to do much else. There's a little bit of maintenance work that's going to be needed on some old culverts, and that's about it.
They've heard all the horrors about how steep this is, but
Oh, it isn't so bad. Once you get past that initial where it was chopped off, bottom of the hill was
Right.
chopped off. It's not so bad at all.
no, this is much.
And this is much more, oh yeah, much more road-like here. And you can see there's still the gravel paving stone is still here. Now you folks at Heritage have this wonderful program designating scenic highways. Now here's a real historic scenic highway. I mean, this one's never even been paved. It's so historic and scenic.
Well, it does have all the stuff it's supposed to have to be a scenic highway.
There you go.
Natural features and historic features. And low traffic.
Yeah, the traffic isn't too heavy at the moment. The occasional odd historian and the little day trip hiker and the occasional Boy Scout and the deer, of course. Now, here is one of the first, yeah, it's one of the first demonstrations of 19th century engineering work here. It's there's a little spring that comes down from the top of the hill and goes under a little bridge here. This will need some work, but it's essentially there.
It's a nice feature.
Yeah. Nice, great 19th century stonework.
Well, we won't talk about
A little rough down there, is it?
This side is really
Yeah, it's going to need some work. Particularly, it needs some work from the point of view of safety. We need some guardrails and that sort of thing.
worked on. It's got a concrete liner.
Yeah, yeah. At some point, there were the round concrete culverts put in these things. Don't know when.
Spot these things and put together.
Yeah, we need to do not just a historic tour, but a nature tour as well.
Yeah, it's crazy, not?
Yeah.
You got all kinds of stuff.
I mean, you can get the
Now we're
animal life.
above a dry masonry stone retaining wall that runs all up the side of this thing
Now,
here.
again, all of this was created for the road.
We think so. Well, it was definitely done for the road, and we think it was done for the forts. It's a bit too much of an engineering project just to get to a house on top of a hill up here.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Take this back and you'll expose it.
Yeah, when we get the undergrowth cut down on the sides here, you'll get a much better view of what's along either side.
Yeah, I think a nature trail would again attract people that might not care about the forest.
And just imagine riding a horse-drawn wagon or coach up and down this.
Yeah.
I think it's a really sellable attraction in itself.
Well, I'm sure that's what the game from we use it for the building develop. Well, I guess I think that logically.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, somebody
I don't think there'll be any question about it. The Games preserves people, maybe. That's the nice thing about doing this in Frankfurt. There's so many resources here
and then again,
to help us out.
get more partners.
Exactly.
And so the soil conservation thing.
Now, Nick, is this also something that they were trying to build up, or is this just natural feature?
I think that's just natural. Just your Kentucky hillside limestone rocks and soil. Yeah, you can see they did have to chop back into it some. Here we've got more retaining wall. Yep.
As I understand is that the trails, for instance, can apply for. That's what they're going to use it for.
To recondition, yeah.
Recondition.
We have applied for a federal grant that will make this usable. Get the heavier undergrowth, especially on the bottom end of it, out. Right through here, there's not much needs doing at all. Where something's encroaching in where you'll be crashing into your vehicle. Other than that, it's good to go.
You know, I think in Kentucky where horses are just, everybody loves them. Have a horse-drawn vehicle, and you're going to generate a lot of money. Especially if they can see it from the tower.
Exactly. Yes.
Every day.
And then we'll promote it at the Old Capitol, at the History Center, at the Tourist Commission, and then I can envision families walking around on the streets in downtown Frankfort, and they see people up on top of the hill at the Civil War fort. Now, what kid is going to let the family get out of Frankfort without taking that ride and going up and see the Civil War fort?
Oh, yeah. Plus you got to ride a horse. You got one horse.
Yep. Now, if you look up there, that's where we're going to be. That's the switchback. Yeah, we're going to be up there. Oh, I don't know, it's a couple hundred yards up, and we make the turn back, and that's the retaining wall under the upper section of the road.
So the wall we weren't see, this wall looks like
yes, yes, the wall to our left looks like the one up there. Only I think this one in some places is considerably taller. I'm sorry, we're much closer to the switchback than I thought we were. We're right here. Yeah. I don't think so. And if the road surface is stable and safe, I don't see any reason to fool with it. See, we got an old culvert here, and that's washed out a bit. That'll have to have some work.
Right, and that was been.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I don't know when all that was done, but at some point it was definitely reconditioned. Then we make our switchback. Around we go.
Again, it's just nearly as bad as I was led.
Yep. Mm-hmm. We've had. Yeah, we've had some folks in from Bluegrass Carriage Works down in Danville that are professionals that run carriage rides, and they think it's perfectly fine as far as the turning radius and the width of the road and everything like that. That's real pretty. Spring.
Have you seen this actually in work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does run on occasion.
And they would just be running one up and not like one up and one down?
I think they want to have one. They want to have two operating, is my understanding. Now, where you meet and pass, I don't know. That's theirs to work out on the top, I guess. Yep. Yeah. And they figure it'll be about an hour's trip both ways by horse, by coach, because they can't rush it, especially the downhill. Well, the uphill you can't rush from the point of view of the horse, and the downhill you can't rush from the point of view of safety. So you're looking at about an hour's trip.
Well, then, what's the interpretation is always at the fort? How long do you think it would take for either self-guided or a guided tour?
Well, I don't know how long a tour will take because we've never been able to see it all yet. It's so covered with the jungle up here. We don't know what features are going to be revealed. We've found a lot in the new redoubt, one of the two forts here that we didn't know we could see. And a tour of that, which I had originally thought was going to be pretty much a secondary attraction, is going to take a lot longer than we had originally thought. So I really don't know.
So do you anticipate having them both cleared by September?
I hope. The work on the new redoubt is almost finished, and it's gone a little quicker than I expected it would. And Fort Boone is probably going to be a little easier to clear because it has been cleared within my memory. Well, in 1983, most of it was cleared.
Cleared that for the year.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to try to pass.
No, you don't want to pass on this. See, here's where the retaining wall sort of begins to peter out. Yep. There are some very nice views from up here. This one's cut because of the power line that runs through here, and we'll develop some more overlooks like this. You'll be able to look all down in the Kentucky River Valley, see the lock and dam and all that as you come up the road.
Yeah, that was one of my questions. So you are going to have those?
Oh yes.
Yep. Was there some talk about removing these lines? Or?
Not these so much. The ones that we'd like to see moved is the big main line that goes across the top of the hill. This is a watering trough. We don't know when this was put in, but you can understand, having come this far, that if you were a horse pulling a wagon up this road, you'd want a little water at this point. I could use a little water at this point, as a matter of fact.
Would we refurbish this and use it for the horses?
I'd rather leave it as a relic, I think.
And just interpret it?
I think so, yeah.
I mean, at Camp Nelson, during the excavation there, they found something they called hydraulic cement, which may well be what this is. So it could be.
It could date from that far back. I just don't know. That's one of the many things we got to find out. But it's an interesting feature. And we have records, Tom has at the Military History Museum, where they were talking about installing a water pumping system to get water up to the top of the hill to the forts. And we don't know where any of that was either. And we hope once we get the jungle cleared away, we'll be able to get the archaeologists in and find some trace. The drawings of Fort Boone, hello. The drawings of Fort Boone show a pile of water barrels. A pile of water barrels right in the middle of the fort. So we know that they were at least carting wagon loads of water barrels up. And
they had a steam pump.
Oh yeah, that was a big spectacular device at Camp Nelson. Almost went vertically up the side of the Palisades. Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, this was a little bit off the beaten path. Garrison.
Yeah, there were.
I was amazed at how much larger the garrison conducted.
Yeah, there were periods when there was no garrison here at all. In fact, in June of 1864, when the Confederates made their attack, there was no garrison at all. And that's why the governor had to call up the local militia, including the Peaks Mill Rangers. And the Peaks Mill Rangers, yes. And the 36th Regiment of the Enrolled Militia. And they are the gentlemen that defended the fort. And they weren't professional soldiers. They were the shopkeepers and probably state government workers, even in 1864, and the farmers. And they succeeded in defending this place. And one of the men behind the walls firing a musket at the Confederates was the governor, Thomas Bramlett.
When we get into this cleared space here, this is being open field?
It was. This was part of the farm now. We're almost up to where the farmhouse was.
So we can have been originally, however.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There were no trees up here at all during the war. They would have, the farm in the first place that was here before the war would have gotten rid of a lot of forest. Then when the Army came in and built the fort, they would have cut down trees in every direction to create a field of fire. And then when you had soldiers in garrison here, anything that was left got turned into firewood. So there were probably no trees at all. And photographs taken from downtown, like pictures of the old Capitol looking in this direction, you don't see any trees up here.
Now, did the Confederates come up this way?
No. They came up just the opposite direction from the way we're doing it.
And there's a beautiful wall that still provides the
Yep. They came in what's now Home Street and Old Owington Road, and then came up just exactly the opposite side of the hill from where we are.
Now, was the Union garrison in Fort Boone and not in the New Redoubt?
Right. When the attack was made in June 1864, the New Redoubt wasn't even here. They were installing some outworks for smaller artillery pieces in the area where they eventually built the New Redoubt. But it hadn't been built yet. All right, we're almost here.
Forts, artifacts, and the battle itself.
Yes, we'll talk about the two forts, how they went about building them, the different features of them, and then what happened here as well. And also the life of soldiers that were stationed up here. Howdy. Little maintenance work there.
Thorns, yeah.
Thorns? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I guess that's a hazard.
This is the sweat covered.
Now, because we haven't done any clearing in that area yet, you don't realize it, but we just walked in to the middle of one of the two forts here. We're now in the center of the New Redoubt. The word redoubt means nothing but an enclosed earthwork. Civil War forts were not, for the most part, made with log palisades like Fort Apache, and the ones inland weren't made out of masonry and stone. They were made out of soil, for the most part, because artillery was good enough by that point that a cannon could turn a wooden fort into splinters and a masonry fort into powder if you gave them enough time. So let's go down here and we can see part of one of the walls. This is the city's police radio tower, by the way.
Will this be staying here?
No, that's scheduled to go.
Now we're going to clear up the entire interior of the fort.
We almost have, and we will.
So is your crew still holding out?
Oh yes, they're still chopping away.
Oh yeah. It is amazing. The first time I came up here, it was one of those things you couldn't see good with. Now you can actually...
Right down through here, you can see one of the outer walls of the New Redoubt. Then it sinks down and goes down into the ditch. How these things were built was they dug a deep ditch around the area they wanted to be the fort, and then threw the dirt inward, and tamped it down firmly. What we've discovered in the course of this already is that there is a stone core to this fort, which was sort of surprising. Some of the drawings, period drawings, indicated that there was some structure inside the soil, and now that we've got the undergrowth cleared away from part of it, we can see that there was a stone core to the walls. It's a little unusual. And we'll head back up this way. That's part of, you just came up where part of the wall was. That area right in through there was the backyard of the farmhouse. So this section of wall that we just walked up off the road, and we just walked up from looking at that section of wall, was pretty much flattened. It's gone. We have, some of it is really, really well preserved, and some portions of it are just completely gone now. Which is good in a way, because it gives us an opportunity to reconstruct some areas so we can show it back to its original shape. This was the magazine, which was the ammunition storage area. It was right in the middle of the fort. It was a stone masonry lined, probably originally had a wooden roof with soil tamped over it, and would have been a big dome-shaped structure with the gate right here. There's a big pile of stone over there. Don't know what it is, unless maybe it's part of this structure that at some point somebody tossed out there. Maybe the roof and part of the walls. Don't know yet. But this is where the ammunition for the cannons would have been stored, and on either end you can still see the stonework of the stone walls. And they would have had the solid shot explosive shell for the artillery pieces, and the gunpowder ammunition, which usually came in big canvas, heavy canvas sacks, would have been stored in here. And it was in the middle of the fort, obviously, so that would be the least vulnerable place. And they were constructed so if they exploded, the blast went that way. And then there was a little hump of soil opposite the gate, the door of the magazine, that's called a traverse. And what that did was to keep shells, bullets, or shell fragments from flying into the gate and into the interior of the magazine here and starting a fairly spectacular explosion. And the clearing that we've done so far has only now let you really get a good view of this magazine and what it looks like up here.
Will there be archaeological investigations?
Yes, we need to do a lot of very serious archaeology to try to find out the details of construction of the magazine, details of construction of the fort wall. We think we're going to know quite a bit about that, but the archaeologists will have to tell us the real details, and we'll be looking for traces of the battle. Folks with metal detectors have over the years probably removed most traces of the battle. And in fact, I'd say right there someone's been hunting, and what they're doing is robbing us of a lot of information about what went on up here. But hopefully we'll get the archaeologists up before it all goes away. Here you can, and this was a discovery that once we took the undergrowth from this part down, you can see the stone inside of the wall. Most Civil War earthworks were just earth, tamped firm, but this one did have a stone core under the stone, under the soil of the earthworks. And we found remainders of it, which you couldn't see before. There were 13 gun emplacements for big artillery pieces, big siege guns.
Were they mounted?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And if you look right ahead, straight ahead of you, there is a platform for a heavy siege gun. 24, 32 pounder would have sat right on that little mound there, which we've only just discovered. And then see beyond that, out in the clearing, is another one. And those both just came to light. And there's a whole circle of them around us here. And those are where the really big guns would have been sitting.
And those weren't here when the battle took place?
No. This fort hadn't even been built yet. After the attack on Fort Boone, the federal engineers came in and said that it wasn't good enough. We needed a better fort, just like the federal government. And they came in and then built this one. And if you look down the slope there, you can see what an obstacle this would have presented to anyone trying to make an attack.
And we're actually sitting above. Fort Boone is down the hill.
Fort Boone is actually it's on the top of the cliff you see from downtown Frankfort, but that's not really the top of Fort Hill. Right up here is really the top, the highest point of the hill. And if you remember, no trees anywhere. They could see for miles up here. And we calculated the range of some of the guns up here, and in theory, they could have put a shell with the artillery they had through the front window of the Department Library and Archives building, which means that just about anything in downtown Frankfort was fair game.
Much more strategic location than
Yeah.
was Fort Boone.
Yeah.
And I guess the regulars came in realized that this was a high ground and you were getting the high ground at the course, obviously you're going to move to the high ground.
That's exactly it. They were giving away the high ground advantage, and the federal engineers recognized that. We're recycling some material from up here. The cedar trees that we're taking down, we're keeping the logs, and we're going to use those for our signage posts and railings and that sort of thing. And this, we're just walking around the wall of the fort. If you, that, yes, that's what would popularly be called the moat. Civil War terminology is the ditch, and that's where the soil came from, that they would have piled up this way, and
there would be another lump in front of it.
Another lump in front of it. What do you call that lump? We need Mike West here. He's the president of the Friends of Fort Hill, and he's taking a big interest in the terminology of all this.
It would be French, whatever.
Yes, it's all in French, and I have a hard time remembering it. The glacis, G-L-A-C-I-S, glacis. The French speakers that watch this will doubtless call us up and
That's not right.
figure this out for us.
Glacier. Who knows? So you're going to rebuild this wall where it was obviously blood?
Yes. There was a little problem here. This is the terminus of the road that was built up onto Fort Hill in 1971 and comes up from Blanton Acres. And this is the road that we will not be using as a public access to the site. Unfortunately, when this road was put in, it went right through one wall of the new redoubt. And if you see this big mound here, that's a section of the wall with a gun platform for a big heavy artillery piece behind it. And then if you look where we just came, that's the other side of the wall with another gun platform. And for reasons unknown, this road was run right smack between it. That's bad in that we lost some of the fort, but it's good in that we've got nothing here of any value now. And once we get the archaeologists to take a look at this and tell us what's under it, it'll then allow us to rebuild this section of the fort back to a nice sharp profile like it looked originally before the erosion rounded off all the surface. I think I hear a deer, but I don't see it. Hi, Bambi.
Young happy doe.
They come up and stand and watch us work, and I've even had them watch us when the big guy next to me working with a chainsaw. Yeah. They don't bother us, and I don't think we bother them.
It's not like they aren't used to people.
Yeah, they're
people all over this hill.
They are fairly tame.
There's probably about a dozen people up here right now.
Yeah. But right in here you can see the contour of the fort wall very, very, very well.
When did they bring the heavy equipment out?
Well, I don't know. I've been taking out tree limbs with that. But you can see the top of the wall was here, and that's about the original height that it was, so you get a pretty good idea of the obstacle that was presented to the enemy. And then it dips down into that ditch, then rises back up, and then descends down out into what's now forest. It would originally have been covered with sod and grassed over, and what we're hoping is that grass will take off and go up here. Everywhere that the sun can get to the soil, this nice heavy grass does grow, so we hope that's what will happen on the areas we're exposing. Let's head up this way. All this has just appeared more or less by magic out of the undergrowth that was up here. It was just incredible, the vines and weeds and little trees and saplings. But now you can see that this was the wall of the fort circling around, and each of these large mounds, like the one we're standing on, were platforms for the big heavy artillery pieces. You guys want to have a reenactment and try to attack and we'll defend? No.
Well, sir,
No, we surrender. Good enough, good enough.
we were wondering if the archaeologists were going to come up and go through the bottle collection.
Yeah, we've got a wonderful beer bottle collection up here. It is of archaeology caliber, I think. They could assemble a nice reference collection.
Yes, I think they could. It's a very nice size collection.
Yep. And what you can see over there is we're revealing the soil. Yeah. We find more and more trash, and one of the projects will be to come up and clear that all away.
Now, you were saying it was an Eagle Scout project? Or?
Yeah, we're thinking about the possibility of an Eagle Scout project to take care of exactly that sort of thing. And right down here was another feature we've just discovered, and that was the gate. Every fort's got to have a gate, and our fort's got a gate. First, though, I was talking about that stone interior to the soil fort wall. You can see it real well here. It has, over the years, eroded the soil off of this, and you can see where they piled stone here. The forts on this hill are almost unique in that they are Union Army forts built in part by slave labor. The Union Army authorities borrowed local slaves from their owners. Slavery was still legal and commonly practiced in Kentucky until after the end of the Civil War. So it's sort of ironic that Union Army forts were built by slave labor, but these in part were, and also partly by soldiers and also by military prisoners.
Big piles of crushed stone.
Yeah, that's that stone that was the interior of the wall. It really, the drawings show these little lines that look like stone. Yeah, it would have been higher, it would have been up, you know, well, that's something the archaeologists will give us some information about, but it would have been higher than where we are now. And this was the gate.
Sally Port.
The Sally Port, yes. We can sally forth from the Sally Port. And it's aligned so that you can drive a wagon in it, and then you go right between the traverse and the gate of the magazine.
So the original road would have came to this gate?
Yeah, we don't understand yet how that road connected with the forts because of the forest. We just haven't been able to see the terminus of the road and how it works, but that's something we hope to discover.
Is there a traverse in front of this gate?
I don't think so.
Doesn't look like it.
I don't think so.
There usually is, but it doesn't.
Well,
look
I know there may be the primitive one if you clean that area out
Yeah.
there, but
We're thinking about cleaning on down to connect into that meadow there, and that'll be the extent of it. We're just about through cleaning the undergrowth from the inside of Fort Boone, and what we're doing is leaving a canopy over it to help control erosion, to leave some roots to control erosion, but we still want to clear it well enough that you can see what's here, and we've accomplished that, and also to get sunlight down so that grass like this can grow and replace the undergrowth, the forest type stuff.
keep the walls and the earth from eroding.
Right, keep it from eroding anymore. Yep. That's pretty much the inside of the new redoubt. It circles on around this way. We'll go down and go on down the trail to Fort Boone, which is the other fort. We haven't really started clearing there yet. But it's the fort that has a more interesting historical story to tell. It's the one that actually got attacked in 1864 by John Hunt Morgan's raiders. We've walked in a big circle.
being a secessionist at heart,
Yes.
we will clear down to the Confederate line. So
Oh yes, yeah, we'll clear and show where the Confederates fought during the battle, and it'll be real interesting because there's a stone wall there, and the records, the historical records, tell that the Confederates concealed themselves behind that wall, and you can see where they were, and then just up the hill.
now, why would the engineers have allowed a stone wall to exist in
I don't know.
a field of fire?
Why they didn't tear that wall down, I don't know. One can come up with a conjecture that the farmer who owned that stone wall was able to influence that decision in some way. It is possible, it's conceivable that politics was having an effect on decisions in Frankfurt in the 19th century. I think that's conceivable to me.
Now, this area we're walking in, is this a sunken road, or is this
No,
built over time?
this I think was done when a lot of people brought four-wheel drive vehicles up, and I think this is 20th century. In any event, we're going to use it as the walking trail to connect the two forts. Yeah, there's no reason to come up and go smashing new trails and roads and such. We'll just use wherever we can what's already here.
The other thing is there may not have actually been engineers.
Well, that's true. The military engineers that worked on Fort Boone, their expertise might not have been too great either. We know the artillery men that were here weren't very good, because in the attack in 1864, they fired some shells into some of the houses in South Frankfurt that they were here to defend. Somewhere in this area between the two forts is where one of the most interesting episodes to me happened. Those slave laborers that were working on making new gun emplacements up where they eventually built the new redoubt. When the Confederates came up that hill from up where Old Owington Road is now, the workers took off running back in this direction toward Fort Boone to seek the shelter of the fort. The adjutant general, the inspector general, General Lindsay, who was in command of this whole business on the Union side, encountered them somewhere in this area and refused them entry into the fort. He had gotten word of the Fort Pillow massacre had happened a few weeks before, and in that instance the Confederates had attacked a fort. It was defended by black soldiers in the Union Army, and there'd been a massacre. Lindsay said that he was aware of that, and he was afraid that if the Confederates captured Fort Boone with those black men in there, they would consider them as soldiers, and they might be killed. Now, he didn't put this in his report, but he might also have been aware of the resolution that the Confederate Congress had passed, which allowed for the execution in the field of white officers in command of black troops. That could have been bearing on his mind too, and I wouldn't blame him. But
Probably wasn't too secure in his troops' ability to hold the fort.
exactly, he knew the caliber of soldier he had here, which wasn't too great. So what he did is, whatever his motivation, it worked out fine in the end. He didn't let them in the fort, and he sent them down the hill, down the road, the way we just walked up.
So they weren't harmed.
No, they weren't harmed, no. Probably pretty thoroughly frightened, but not physically harmed. And there were only 2 of the defenders of the fort were wounded, as a matter of fact. And we don't know for sure the number of Confederate casualties. They thought that they shot 5 in the course, this part of the battle.
Well, is there any existing evidence of the number of attackers?
Yes, and I forget right at the moment what it was. It was about a company's strength. It was under 100, I think.
But was this when Morgan went to Cynthiana?
Yes, and that's the important thing about Fort Boone, is the same day that John Hunt Morgan was burning down Cynthiana, a detachment of his men were fighting here and weren't able to burn down Frankfurt. I'm convinced that if it hadn't been for the successful defense of the fort here, the raiders would have gotten into downtown Frankfurt. They'd have burned everything to do with state government and the Union Army, which would have meant no more Old Capitol, All the other buildings on the old Capitol grounds would have gone. The place where Tom's Military History Museum was, that would have burned. Oh, there were warehouses and offices all over town they were using. Even the state YMCA office was the headquarters building of the State Military Board, and that nice little building would have burned. And then what would have happened is somebody from Louisville, somebody from Lexington would have said, now let's move state government. That every time there was a fire of a state government building in Frankfort in the 19th century, the other towns would start lobbying to move state government out. And they never succeeded, but with a destruction here of that magnitude, there'd really been no reason for them to stay, and I think they would have moved. And that would have really changed Frankfort's history.
I think of interest, the reason for building this fort to begin with, the Confederates moving into Frankfort so easily.
In 1862, yeah.
1862.
They just walked right in. Now, if you look out beyond these gentlemen, through that dense wood there, you can see outline. That's the wall of Fort Moon, and it's just completely concealed under this jungle here. And
really allowed it to survive.
oh yeah, it has done us a favor in that it's just pickled it, it's preserved it, and it's in really good shape. It's in better shape than the new redoubt because nobody had a house next to it and nobody built a road through it.
So this is the power line. That we're
Right. Right. We'd like eventually for this to be relocated. But it runs right across the front of the fort.
Is this Kentucky Utilities?
I'm not sure.
I mean, but that's not.
It's the Frankfort Plant Board. And there's no way you're going to be able to see this on camera, and certainly not at this time of the evening, and we tape this after 7:30 in the evening because it's a little warm climbing around up here in midday. But down in the woods in here is that stone wall that the Confederates hid behind when they made their attack. So they were right down there, and the Union defenders were right up here, right on the top of this little crest. And the Capitol is right down this way, and we'll go up to what we're going to develop as one of our overlooks.
So all this will be cleared out so visitors can see it.
Yeah, I think it's real important that you be able to stand at the fort wall and look down and see where the attackers were. This is where the battle took place.
The rounds are being exchanged in this area.
The bullets flew back and forth right here.
Okay.
So this is the critical part of the fort.
Yeah.
The battle is the people.
Right. I mean, it's all an important site.
Sure.
It's the actual military act.
This is where.
In Kentucky with forts, a rarity.
Yeah, that's one of the great advantages to marketing this site is there are lots of earthworks around Kentucky, but hardly any of them were fought over, and this one really was, and that makes it more marketable. As does this, which is a very, very nice view.
And the History Center will be.
And there's the site of the new Kentucky History Center, that big muddy place right down there in the middle of our view.
You've got the arsenal just to the right 40-degree angle.
Left. And of course the new Capitol's on the other side of the hill. You can see all the way out to Library and Archives, which is what makes it a nice marker to show the range of the guns that were here. And we don't want to disrupt the forest look to the top of the hill here, but we'll take enough of the undergrowth here away so that you can get an unobstructed, or reasonably unobstructed.
Right. I mean,
we don't.
Take 2 or 3 trees.
No, and we don't want to take the trees and shrubs that are blocking our view of the Plaza Tower, which you can just barely see from here now, and we don't want to be able to see the Plaza Tower.
Right.
It's a very large modern-day intrusion, but it will be nice to get a better view of the old Capitol, which you can see real well from where I am here.
Now, will the city be developing some kind of safety barrier?
There'll have to be a barrier across here, and particularly down this way, because right down there, and acrophobic Nicky isn't going to take you and show you, is the edge of that quarry that you see from downtown Frankfort, and it's just a straight drop, zoop, straight down, and so there'll have to be very serious safety fencing and barricades along here.
And you've got a really nice 19th century core left to downtown Frankfort.
You really look into the 19th century down here.
Yeah, which is really nice. I mean,
Yeah.
it gives you pretty much, I mean, obviously there's some new things there, but you'll still get sort of an idea of what the soldiers up here would have seen
Yep.
when they were defending the fort and the soldiers that were attacking. And it's, you know, the view itself is worth the climb up the hill.
Yeah, it really is. It's just awfully nice, and with the possible exception of Dr. Birch's view, hi, I think it's the nicest one there is of downtown Frankfort. And there are a lot of nice views of downtown Frankfort because it sits down in that bowl, but this is just really pretty up here. You can see the cemetery off to the left, and in fact at one point during the attack in 1864 the Confederates sent a detachment of troops down through the cemetery to try to get to the arsenal, and the gunners from the fort here were actually firing into the cemetery for a while, and they fired a lot of shells into South Frankfort across the river. The Confederates were trying to get across the covered bridge that Paul Sawyer loved to paint, which is where the Singing Bridge is now, and so they fired from here to try to prevent that. And the people in downtown Frankfort, that made a pretty hefty, lasting impression on them. Hearing these big 30-pound Parrott rifle steel shells flying overhead was not something that you ignored, nor did you forget. But the gunners were, again, amateur, and they hit some of the houses down there in the course of it.
In the process of building the parking lot behind the arsenal, we also found what we think might have been a shell fire from up here.
It's perfectly reasonable for it to have been. They would have been cutting it a little close, but you know, could have.
You know,
And people have found all sorts of shell fragments and all kinds of ordnance stores around the bottom of this hill and across Frankfort. That things fired here, lost from up here. You know, things have lost and rolled down the hill from up here.
But I think if the Confederates didn't get into the heart of Frankfort.
No, the defense was successful. When they made their first attack on the fort here, didn't get into the fort. Governor Bramlett and the other militiamen there fought them off. The next morning, they expected the attack to be renewed, but it wasn't. The Confederates had ridden down, forded the river below the dam, down by Jim's Seafood. They stopped in and got a seafood platter, and, then they rode all the way around and showed up the next morning at the south end of the covered bridge and sent a flag of truce over and demanded the surrender of the city. In fact, they sent one over twice, and both times the city fathers and the Union officials refused the surrender demand.
there was some type of a ruse. There was some.
Yeah, the fellow that was in command of the Confederate attackers, and I forget his name, was just a captain, but he signed it as a colonel, and it was a colonel. I forget his name too. It was one that anybody would have known of, and probably would have been a little bit afraid of. But in fact, he wasn't here. He wasn't around at all. So they fired back and forth across the Kentucky River all day. That was June the 11th, 1864. And if you've ever wondered why Battle Alley is called Battle Alley, it's because the Confederates were there firing across the river at the defenders at the arsenal. They had a cannon rolled out into the lawn of the arsenal and were banging away.
One of the buildings that was across the street from the arsenal that was taken down recently was said to have been struck by one of the rounds.
Struck by a round from it. No, would have had to have been. Would have had to have been.
And this is the only Union state capital that was ever attacked or captured.
That is Frankfort's great distinction in the Civil War. Is it was the only pro-Union state capital the Confederates ever managed to capture. They didn't do it in '64 when the forts were here, but in '62, before the fort was here, they just walked right into town. And that was one reason they built Fort Boone, which is a clever segue for let's walk up here and take a look at Fort Boone. It's it's getting a little dark, but we'll do our best, and we've done nothing here yet. A good bit of this fort was cleared in '83, but it's grown back up.
Was '83 the last time they were going to do something up here?
Oh no, there have been several proposals since then even. I've lost count of the number of proposals to develop the site. The earliest one I know about was in 1946, and it was going to develop this area as a subdivision. It would have preserved the forts as a historic park, but the rest of the hill would have been a subdivision. We're now on the back wall of Fort Boone. There was a farmer's fence that ran down the crest of the hill, and all they did on this side was just to sod up over it and make that more formidable, because nobody was going to mount a serious attack coming up that hill. I've climbed that hill in a Civil War uniform, and it's one of the goofier things I ever did. You're not going to successfully attack this position from there. Right over in here, there's a pile of stone that was a platform for one of those Parrott rifled cannon that was sending the 30-pound shells flying over downtown. There were 2 of those here.
I bet you don't have one.
I've got a shell.
That's what I mean.
I've got a shell, and I suppose I could have carted it all the way up here tonight, but maybe not.
How much the shell weighs?
That's how much the projectile weighs.
I can see why you didn't bring it up.
Yes, yes. This is the back wall. Like I say, I think it was just a farmer's fence that was already here, and they reinforced it by putting this big pile of sod on it, and that's all they really needed for the back wall of the fort. Then we're now standing in the main part of Fort Boone. There was another magazine here that was partly excavated in an archaeology project several years ago, and we need more archaeology here. And then this is the big main front wall of Fort Boone, and it's much more impressive and formidable than the back wall we were just on, because this is the direction they expected an attack to come from, and sure enough, this is where it came. And where we were pointing earlier down at the stone fence that the Confederates hid behind is right down in that way. So again, this was the main battle area where the fighting actually took place. And it's grown up. There's just so many trees and undergrowth that it's real difficult to get a vision of an image of what was up here. But that'll be the next phase. Now that we're pretty much finished with the interior of the new redoubt, we'll move down here and clean this out so you'll be able to see it too. And we hope by next June to have the place presentable on the next anniversary of the attack, and be able to bring folks up and give them an even more exhaustive, if not exhausting, tour, the one that we've just had. There's a lot more of Fort Boone that extends off in that direction, but it's just so overgrown that at this time of night, we're losing our light, I don't think there's much reason to go down in there. And maybe we'll come back later and do another show when we've cleared some of that away.